Tom Woods Show, episode 1690.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Folks, by now you've probably noticed that news about the virus is almost always fact-free hysteria these days. So you need my brand new free ebook, Your Facebook Friends Are Wrong About the Lockdown. Go pick it up at wrongaboutlockdown.com. Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. Dave Smith is back on the show, and you know what? We're just going to shoot the breeze, all right? Dave, as you know, is the host of Part of the Problem, which is an outstanding libertarian podcast. He is a comedian, very successful one at that, and he's just been on fire lately. And I just want to talk about just some items in the news because I listen to Dave, and he's a great commentator, great communicator, and just a great guy to bounce ideas off of. And I thought that would be something fun for us to do today. Dave, welcome back.
Thanks, Tom. As always, it's great to be with you.
I got the idea to talk to you because I've been listening to your seemingly endless series of conversations with Michael Malice on each other's shows. And I thought, all right, look, obviously these two have an endless number of things they could say about an endless number of topics. So I want a piece of this. So here you are. And
there we go.
I said I don't have any, let's say, earth-shattering issues to discuss. I have some minor issues that I think point to some earth-shattering issues. It's just some passing items from the news that I think we can place in context. So, for instance, you got tremendous engagement with a tweet. I'm sure you know which one I mean. A few days ago, maybe even more recently than that, having to do with something that happened in Seattle. There was a Black Lives Matter protest, and somebody in a car drove into the protesters and actually killed one of them. And what you tweeted was, you retweeted with comment the ABC News report on this and their Twitter summary. Now, by the way, if you click through to the ABC News article, it's no better. It's not like the Twitter summary was off, but the article was pretty good. Well, you know what? You blessed the world with this tweet, and here I am going to take the whole punchline away. Why don't you tell them?
Okay, well, let me just tell you first of all. So I know what tweet you're talking about because it's I believe the most engagement I've ever gotten from a tweet. I've never, here, let me just pull it up right now on my phone, okay?
It was over 13,000 likes last I looked.
Yes, that's right about where it is. A little over 13,000 likes and a little under 4,000 retweets. And you know the reason why, Tom, and this will hurt, you know the reason why it got so much engagement?
No,
is because
don't tell
I
me.
got a retweet from Ben Shapiro.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's what we owe it all to. And you know what I was thinking was, there's somebody, someone made like a YouTube video of just me and you on my podcast from a few years ago
Talking
doing
about
a
Ben Shapiro?
takedown of Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man, if he does happen to, Google our names together, that is going to be one of the first things that come up, which would actually, be pretty cool if he saw that. But yeah,
also, it was a great tweet. It was so well written. It was beautiful.
Well, this is it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And Greg Gutfeld, who I like very much, who has a show on Fox News, he also retweeted it. So yeah, so that's the key, is to get a couple famous people tweeting it. But so ABC News tweeted, and the article, as you indicated, was just as bad. But they tweet, a young protester has died from injuries she suffered when a luxury car plowed into her and another woman during a Black Lives Matter protest Saturday on a Seattle freeway. So my response to it is I quote tweeted and said, race is only relevant when it will heighten racial tensions. So ABC doesn't mention that the driver was black. They do, however, give you the critical detail that it was a luxury car.
So beautiful.
I could also have added in there, a few other elements. So they did mention that it was women. They now everybody knows, and I think this is the reason why people, kind of latched onto the tweet or appreciated it, because everybody knows that had this been a white guy driving the car and had killed a black woman, of course that would have been in the headline. That would have been the story, just like we see all the time. White man kills unarmed black guy. They always put the race in the story when it can suit their narrative. But instead, since it's a black guy who killed a white woman, this just messes with the narrative. It's like a black guy killed a white woman who's protesting for black lives. It doesn't really fit cleanly into any narrative. So they just say luxury car hits woman at Black Lives Matter protest. And it's just, it does, it like you said, it's just this one story. Obviously, it's a tragic story, but it kind of hints at the agenda of the corporate press, which is really sinister. It's like to always kind of antagonize and heighten racial conflict. And it's sickening.
Yeah, I know. I mean, these are the same people who say we need a president who will unify the country.
Right.
How does it unify the country? To obviously imply that it's a white driver. I mean, what else are we supposed to take from luxury car, first of all? Then by the way, if you look at the comments on that ABC News tweet, it will actually make you feel, for the most part, better, because we have a lot of people who know the story saying, wow, a luxury car that drove itself. There's no driver in the story, right? No driver at all.
And of course, and this is one of the things I was talking about on my most recent podcast and speaking to libertarians about this. If, hypothetically, let's just say that every time that a Black person committed a violent act against a white person, the media was really heightening up the racial tensions. And they were like, Black man kills unarmed white man. And you just constantly saw that headline, and they were always inserting race into it. I think libertarians would rightfully say, this is unnecessary. Like there's nothing productive about working up racial hostilities. Let's deal with the criminal element. Let's deal with the violent crime problem. But we don't need to do that. So why do we not push back when there's this constant demonizing of white people and an attempt to, always kind of paint this picture, when the reality of the situation is, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you, there's not a huge epidemic of white people committing violent crimes against Black people in this country. So I just don't, it's like, if we would do it on that side, I think we should do it on this side as well. That's kind of at least my take on it.
Well, especially for people who genuinely, not as posturing, but like you and me, who genuinely want human understanding, who genuinely want toleration and peace between people. That is genuinely what we want. We don't want to gin up artificial conflicts where none exist. We want people to get along. And they can't if they keep having shoved down their throats this view of the world that does not correspond to reality. And of course, again, if it had been the opposite, if it had been a white driver driving into a Black protester, obviously the races would have been identified. Here they leave the race of the driver out. They have a photograph of the victim, but obviously meant to imply something that is not the case. I mean, it's obviously meant to create. And that reminds me of something I wrote about in my email newsletter this week, about the very idea of unifying the country. I can't believe I even fell for this for so long, because I finally stopped to think about the absurdity of this. We have people saying, we need a president who can unify the country, who can bring us together. And I think the reason I didn't see the problem with that was because Ron Paul used to say liberty can bring us together. So the words bring us together just had a benign association in my mind. But now with the one normal person out of there and all sociopaths remain, imagine the absurdity of looking at America today and the nature of the divisions. We're not divided over what's your favorite color, what was your favorite board game as a kid, what's your favorite pastime. We're not divided about that. We're divided over, should we suppress your dissident voice or not?
Right.
How do you unify that? How?
Yes. Should we burn cities to the ground? Should we okay. I don't know how, the difference, I guess, between libertarians, like the great Ron Paul talking about bringing people together, is, like in the same sense that me and you want to not gin up unnecessary conflicts between different groups or different races or ethnicities in the country. When we talk about bringing people together, it's kind of a different thing. What we're really saying is like, look, we can peacefully coexist. That you don't have to have, obviously, in Portland, they're going to have different social values than they have in, some part of Alabama or something like that. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you have to go to war with each other. The Democrat version of bring people together is dominating the other half of the country who doesn't agree with them. So it's a very different type of bringing people together. I still kind of, admire so much about the Ron Paul days, but it does seem like, unfortunately, that to some degree was a flash in the pan, and it's heartbreaking. But the truth is that most people are not operating from the same type of mind state that libertarians like you and I are. And the wars are the longest in American history. They're still, raging on. The Fed is going nuts. Government spending's through the roof. All these problems, and that's not what's getting people out into the street. And the racial stuff is. And unfortunately, it's something that we have to grapple with. That we really care about being intellectually consistent and logically sound, and most people don't. They just don't care about it. Anyone who's listening to this show who's ever gotten into an argument with a leftist or something, they know this. You're like, aha, I've got you. You're logically inconsistent. And here, I can demonstrate why you're logically inconsistent. And they don't care. They're not operating from the same mind state that you are. And I say this as somebody, you could go back and listen to my second appearance on this show ever, where my whole message was like, don't give up on the left, because I used to be on the left and I was converted, and we can still convert a lot of people. And maybe that is true, but we do have to recognize that for the vast majority of them, it's just peaceful coexistence is probably our best bet.
Yeah. Yeah. And, at this point, I just take so much for granted. I just expect certain things to happen, that when they happen, they barely even register with me. Like in terms of, for example, media agenda, it's so ridiculously obvious. You could just pick literally any news site on any day, look at the headlines, just the headlines, and see the way they want us to look at the world. So I just went to Yahoo News, and the top story is new Trump book chronicles his dysfunctional family. Could you imagine them saying new Obama book chronicles his dysfunctional family, or new Jimmy Carter book chronicles? Yeah. It's just ridiculous. And then the other day,
and all of a sudden, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but all of a sudden, the idea of people on the left having these strong family values about like exactly, what a dysfunctional family is. This guy's been divorced. My God, how horrible!
The scandal of it all.
For all the things you can throw at Trump, and there is, I did a whole episode criticizing the Trump, the state of Trumpianism in America today, and I'm not a fan, but I have to say, it's actually kind of impressive that he's got like kids from different marriages and multiple divorces, yet he has all his kids around him and they all seem to just, speak so highly of him. That part of his life kind of impresses me a little bit. Well,
yeah, I hear that. The item that I had in mind, though, I just noticed in my notes, the specific news item was, again, I don't know which app I had open on my phone, some kind of news app. And the top item, I forget which person Tucker Carlson was interviewing, but according to the headline, he questioned her patriotism. I'm sure he didn't, but whatever. I don't remember.
No, I think he did.
Oh, did he really? Okay, maybe.
No, I don't think he was interviewing her. I think he was just talking about her.
Oh, was it? Oh, is that what it was? Okay. And so the headline was, such and such person shoots back at Tucker Carlson. Now, if let's say Rachel Maddow had attacked Rand Paul on the grounds that he's this or that, do you think Rand Paul hitting back would necessarily be the top headline? Would that be the top headline? We'd get to see Rand's side of the story. You know what I mean?
And well, what the story was about was her, this woman was, she was asked whether we should take down statues. She was saying we should take down Confederate statues. And then she was asked whether we should take down statues of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. And she was like, well, that's a national dialogue that we need to have, but maybe that is what we need to do. And Tucker Carlson was kind of like, okay, at what point do you start questioning people's patriotism? Now, Tucker Carlson's more of a traditional Republican conservative than I am. So I don't know. It's like, I just don't find like questioning someone's patriotism as being such a like slanderous accusation. But just technically speaking, if you hate Washington and Thomas Jefferson, I guess it's kind of reasonable to ask if you like the country or not.
Yeah, right. They are sort of figureheads, right?
They were pretty important in this whole America thing.
Yeah, no, fair enough. It was just, and then here's another thing. Now, this is kind of making me wonder about some of my own presuppositions here. We're looking now at some of the plans to send kids back to school in the fall. Mm-hmm. And it varies widely across the country what the different plans are. Now, I just saw a headline. I haven't looked at the details. I just saw a headline saying, now, of course, you know the headline is how they're going to phrase it, is that DeSantis in my state of Florida is giving the authorization to reopen schools fully despite rising coronavirus cases. Of course, that has to be in there. Right? Of course, obviously that has to be in there. But it seems to me, given the polling data about, and you don't know how, when push comes to shove, parents at the last minute may decide, I'll send them to school anyway. But you are at least anecdotally hearing stories about parents saying, to heck with this stupid thing, I'll homeschool before I'll do this to my kid. If these crazy requirements, and who knows how many of these kids are going to be sitting behind plexiglass and whatever, make more people want to homeschool, you would think that this would make them stop doing it, because the government schooling is a key program for them. This is it. This is the whole bag of goodies for them, where they have to get the young kids into those seats. So could it be that maybe they really and truly, honestly are panicked about the virus even now, after what we know about kids and everything, not getting it and not really being transmitters of it? Do you think they really are, or is it just a matter of they have two conflicting things? They want the panic, but they also want to indoctrinate the kids, and it's just a matter of a tug of war, which wins out. I mean, I can't make sense of this.
Yeah, I don't know that I know for sure what the answer is. I'm sure there are a lot of people within the government who are panicked about it, because so much, so many people are. But I also think that there's one more dynamic at play, which is that once the state did I mention this on your show once? But I just remember watching this. I've mentioned this on my podcast before, but I remember watching this documentary on abortion once. It was like from a very pro-choice point of view. And there was this abortion doctor who had been an abortionist for like 30 years. And she was like, listen, there is no moral issue with having an abortion. That's a woman's right, and it's a clump of cells and blah, blah, blah. Like, no moral issue with having an abortion. And I remember watching her and thinking, well, yeah, you better believe that, because if you even allow yourself to contemplate the idea that there's a moral issue with abortion, you've been an abortion doctor for 30 years. So you really can't entertain the thought that abortion is murdering babies, because then that makes you a baby serial murderer. So I understand why you're now incentivized to believe this. And I think after the government has shut down everyone's way of life and kicked tens of millions of people out of work, they almost have to justify this now. So they can't admit that maybe that was a mistake, because people will be up in arms. So I feel like in some ways they have to dig in and be like, okay, we can't just say, oh, we're opening school up now. There have to be all of these rules. But I will say that I think perhaps the one light, like the one silver lining of all of this, is that maybe a lot of people do actually follow through and pull their kids out of public school. Maybe this actually begins the unwinding of the university status quo as well. I mean, I saw that article that Harvard is going to do all their school, all their classes online next year.
Yeah, and they still want almost $50,000 a year.
Yeah, they still want $50,000 a year, and you're doing it from your computer. Maybe this really will be the positive unintended consequence of all of this. Let's pray.
Yeah, I hope so. But I mean, I was looking at a thread about that article on Twitter, and you have all these education bureaucrats saying, well, it's still expensive to employ the professors, and as if anybody cares about your costs. I don't care about your costs. I care about the price to me.
Yeah.
Don't complain to me that, it's very expensive to run a university. That's not my problem. Like if I go to the store and I say, well, I think I'd rather have this orange juice than that one because it's $1 cheaper per gallon. If some guy comes out from behind the case and says, "No, well, listen to me, man. Give us a break. It's really rough running an orange juice factory or whatever." That doesn't matter to me. I don't care what it's the absurdity on its face that you would charge $50,000 for the privilege of staring at a screen. And it
Yeah,
seems
it's
like that.
just
But on the other hand, the elites still want their kids to have that certification, though.
no, that's true. That's true. But it would seem like this would have to at least hurt them to some degree. I mean, particularly when all of this information is already on your computer. Like what exactly are you paying for? And I agree with you. There still will be people who want that piece of paper for their kids, but it has to have some effect. I can't believe it has no effect.
Yeah, right. Now, are you still in Jersey, or have you
Yeah.
gone back to the city?
No, I'm in Jersey permanently now. Did I not tell you this? No, me and Lauren got a house in Jersey.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we
Oh.
got a house out here.
Oh, wow. Dave Smith not in the city anymore.
Yeah, I know. It's
I can't
crazy.
say it's not a smart move.
Yeah, it seemed, it was right around the time when they were burning down businesses and dragging people out of them that I thought, is this really where I want to raise my daughter? Maybe not.
Yeah. See, my hope is that there would be people moving with their feet, and above all, businesses moving with their feet. Not like there are a lot of ideal places, but some places are clearly better than others. I mean, I really wanted, not that I wish ill on the residents of any of these places. I mean, some of them aren't to blame, but I really wanted the political classes of these places to feel pain for what they allowed, for what they did with the lockdowns and what they allowed to happen with the riots. And I don't know. I don't know if the numbers will be substantial. I mean, also people have gotten a sucker punch financially because of everything that's going on. Can they afford to move?
Well, there's definitely a lot of people who can't. But the question is, will those who can afford to get out? And I think there have been some indications that people are moving out of the city. But again, what ends up happening, and this is, by the way, I mean, it's been happening even before any of the COVID lockdowns or any of this stuff. There's been large numbers of people have been leaving New York. It's New York and California, all these places where the liberal Democrats have taken over. It's really there's a really profound irony to it where the wealthy people, they can kind of put up with the high taxes and the high cost of living and all that stuff. So they don't move. The poor people really can't afford to move. So it's the middle class who end up leaving in droves. And then you create this kind of tremendous inequality, or not create it, but you have a city with tremendous inequality, which is supposedly the biggest evil, according to these liberal Democrats. And but this is what their policies create. And now it's like on steroids. So that my guess is that you'll see a lot of middle class people leaving New York over the next year. But we'll see.
Now, obviously, this New York City has shown itself to be, which is a place that I love for all the good things about it that are no longer there. To be an unsafe place and having a lot of problems. New Jersey is still has problems, obviously of its own. Can you describe, because I've visited since the lockdowns and then the somewhat slight lifting of the lockdowns. I've visited Georgia and Texas and Alabama and one other place I've been, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Yeah, I guess I've been around. So I've kind of gotten to see what the different lockdown regimes are like. How would you describe things I don't know. You've probably been to the city a couple of times.
Well, I was there yesterday. Yeah, I was there yesterday. I went into I went to the Gas Digital Studios yesterday. And I got to say, I mean, I was driving around the city a bit, and I really find it just incredibly depressing. I mean, you drive through Soho, and there's Soho, and then I was driving through the East Village, and I mean, it's like boarded up store after boarded up store with this really like kind of pathetic, just there's something about it that really just makes my skin crawl when they have these like Black Lives Matter signs outside their door, it basically begging to not be looted.
Yeah.
So basically like, hey, we're with you, go get someone else, I guess, because we're like the good store or something. They have there'll be like people that wrote like Black owned business outside of stores, just to let you know, hey, maybe don't, vandalize this store because we're not the evil white people or whatever. And then it's just, everybody walking around in masks. And it's just, to me, it's just so sad, really depressing that after this city that had been through so much already, now had to deal with all of this. And it's really like it's eerie. I was driving up the block that I used to live on in the East Village, and to see all the boarded up stores and stuff, it's sad. Aside from that, there's a bunch of people, who are like eating outdoors in restaurants. So they've been just like setting up tables like by the curb in New York, and people are eating there and stuff. And it's, I guess they're, trying their best to be kind of normal, but it's a weird vibe.
Yeah. Now, the comedians that you know and that you've seen and at various clubs, these people tend to be on the left, so I assume they favor the lockdown. So they favor them not working. They favor their career stagnating because they really believe, like, they're worried about the virus, I guess. In their heart of hearts.
Well, I mean, I've gotten a lot of text messages and phone calls from comedians who will tell me that they're like, oh man, I'm like following your Twitter feed every day, and like, oh, it's so awesome that you're saying this. But a lot of them are really intimidated too. Like whether it was the stuff about the lockdowns or the stuff about the Black Lives Matter stuff. So there's a lot of them who are kind of closeted nonconformists to the left, but none of them seem to really want to say anything about it. Like they're all just kind of telling me they agree. I shouldn't say all, but a bunch. But yeah, there are a bunch. There are other people I know who are like really freaked out about it and terrified that they're going to get the virus and stuff like that. So I don't know exactly how they feel, but it's really been devastating to a whole bunch of like just like working road comics who make their money by going out every weekend to different clubs around the country. And yeah, there's some of them are starting to open up, and some of them are like going out to the states that are open, but it's been devastating. And yeah, I suppose there are some who are rooting it on.
I have a friend out on the West Coast who has been holding speakeasy events. I mean, basically secret large gathering, not large like 1,000, but large like 50 or more. Where people are having dinner together and trying to be civilized and act like human beings. And I'm sure that's going on a large and small scale all around the country. One thing that's gotten a shot in the arm from all this is so-called agorism. The idea that, look, there are two ways to get by in this world, through peaceful interaction and through violence. And the state is the organized means of the second one of those. But civilized people want to interact with each other peacefully. And so, now, that just sounds like plain old libertarianism, but the next step of agorism is then to say, if you can find a chink in the armor, if you can find something, some area of fresh air where you can breathe free, you should take advantage of that. So, for example, they say everybody's an agorist because nobody drives the speed limit. So right away, you're breaking the law. You're doing something. You're being free, and you're not abiding by the rules. Or if you don't report the income you made on a yard sale, you're an agorist. Well, all right, just take that a little bit farther. There are people exchanging services and carrying on with their lives below the radar. And, at least there's, I guess that's great. I guess one thing where I've been wrong, though, and, I think I'm more right than I am wrong, but I'm wrong sometimes. And one thing I was wrong about was I thought when the states started to open up, there would be such a rush of people who are sick and tired of living like vegetables that they would want to just go and get out. They would want to go places. I am shocked at how many people are still just going to sit in their houses apparently indefinitely. That does surprise me. I was wrong about that.
Well, I think that, I think maybe you were only half wrong about it, because I think the fact that they're so slow with these phases and there's so many rules still, it's not as if we really know how many people would rush out if they just basically said, oh, hey, we are a quasi-free society again, like we once were, and just said, all these businesses can open. I don't know. I don't know exactly how many people would rush out or not. But there's no question that there has been a profound psychological effect on our culture by this whole campaign of kind of, this fear campaign. And maybe some of it was justified. I mean, COVID is a nasty virus. I'm not like trying to, argue that it's not real or something like that. But it's messed with people. And I think it's all of this stuff. This whole half a year so far, I think it's going to be a decade before we really know the effect that this had on the country. But it's pretty major.
Yeah, and it's if they could just give us some kind of a sense of what it would take for normal life to resume. And I mean really normal life. Like just go live. Go do what you want to do. Don't lecture somebody because he wants to play guitar for 100 people. When do we get back to that? They've been very quietly moving toward even as the virus is obviously dying out, they've been very quietly moving toward the extremist position from a few months ago, where I couldn't believe people were saying, well, we're just going to have to wait for a vaccine. It sounds like some of them are moving that way.
Which is really hard to imagine, because it's always been so absurd to me when they at the very beginning of this whole thing, they'd be like, well, it's going to take 18 months to get a vaccine. I mean, that is just complete nonsense. We have no idea if we're going to get a vaccine for this virus. There are many viruses where we've never found a vaccine. And okay, given there's probably more attention placed on this one, but we don't know that we're going to have a vaccine for this. So you might be waiting for something that never comes. So that's quite a thing to say, oh, well, we just have to wait and see if we ever can live normal lives again. And of course, as you've talked about quite a bit, but it's really, they're going to play this thing up in the most dishonest ways. I mean, so when they're testing through the roof, they tell you that cases are surging. Well, no, they're not. The cases aren't surging. We're finding out more about how many people have this virus. And as cases are going up and up, the death rate is going down and down, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an epidemiologist, but that's what herd immunity looks like. That's literally what a virus would be trying to achieve. More and more cases with fewer and fewer deaths. But of course it doesn't get reported that way. So it's just very hard to, when you see, the death rates plummeting and nobody reporting on this positive news, or no one in the kind of mainstream reporting on this, it's, you wonder, you're like, I guess they'll never report, like they'll just never admit this is getting better.
Over the past month, there have been something like 100,000 new so-called cases in, I always put cases in quotation marks. This is a dumb word. A case could be just a person who's going to the hospital for a completely unrelated reason. Oh, you've got it, and it doesn't do anything to you. Okay, well, that's a case in quotation marks. 100,000 new cases over the past month, and yet hospital capacity in Florida is unchanged over the past month. Unchanged, with 100,000 new cases. Now, I know, you got to wait 2 weeks. You got to wait 3 weeks. You got to wait. Okay, but the thing is, the so-called spike in cases started a month ago. So we should have seen a dramatic spike in deaths already. We shouldn't have to wait another 2 or 3 weeks. We should already see it. And that's not happening. And it's just, this is the most, I have never seen people more resistant to good news in my life. Yeah. It is bizarre.
Yeah, people developed a weird stake in this being the worst thing. And they just, if there's any information that indicates that, it's actually not, this isn't the end of the world, this isn't the bubonic plague, okay? It's not a crisis on that level. It's not just that they disagree, they get angry. They get really angry at you for pointing this out. And it's another really strange psychological phenomenon that's going on all around the country. And there's something very strange about it. Like, particularly on the left, they really get off on this. We're the people who believe in science. So all it takes is a few scientists to put up there, just put like Fauci and a few other, these crony scientists up there. And then they get to feel superior to people like you and me and kind of lecture us about how that we need to listen to the science. Like there's something about that really plays into their identity. And so they're like all in on, you cannot downplay how horrible this is. And just really stupid things like, things that don't that like, look, the idea of wearing masks outside is kind of stupid. And the fact that no one can just acknowledge, I mean, I'm sorry. You cannot point me to anything, any real piece of science that in any way says if you're outside, not in a crammed area with a ton of people around you, that wearing a mask is not ridiculous. But they're still kind of lecturing people about that. I mean, obviously masks make sense in certain situations. Okay, if you're a nurse working on a COVID positive patient, throw an N95 on. That's a good idea. But just so many of these things, it's just to keep the hysteria going. And there was like the canceling of all of these fireworks shows on 4th of July. That one really bugged me. And I'm not like a big, I don't really care about fireworks, but there was something about it where it's like, I mean, that's the easiest thing to social distance at. Like, okay, people don't have to be on top of each other while they watch the fireworks. So what the heck is the point of canceling it? It's like, it really feels like you're just trying to deprive people of any semblance of normalcy, that they can't just have fireworks on the 4th of July, like that people can't just have a silly little custom that people enjoy. It really bothers me.
And I guess the thing that is making me the craziest, and I know people could come back and say, this is uncharted territory, you got to cut them some slack. But I really just want to know, what are they looking for? Are they looking for actually zero cases of the thing before we can go back and pursue the livelihoods that we enjoy and the pastimes that we enjoy and all the things that make life not just a biological affair? In fact, so I just shared on Twitter a cartoon from 2013, absurdly prescient. It shows I guess it's like a public health person, and he's standing in front of a case with a person in it, and here's what he says: "We've encased everyone in a vat of gelatin with nutrition fed directly into their mouths once a day. The gelatin is electrically excited so as to stimulate their bodies to aerobic exercise. They all live to at least 150. So they're stuck in a gelatin-filled case, and they get electric stimuli to give them exercise, and they stay alive a long time." And the caption beneath this is, "Fortunately, public health advocates have no legislative power." Well, that's that's pretty prescient, right? Because today it's like, and I guess also the other thing, and we'll stop on this. The key thing is nobody's allowed to make risk assessments for themselves, except if you want to go demonstrate for Black Lives Matter. You could say that's so important that it's worth a massive outbreak during a pandemic. That's just how important. We can't write articles about police brutality. We can't do anything else. We can't have live stream events like everybody else has been doing for everything they believe in.
Listen, it's not the most evil thing that I've ever seen the media and state, perpetrate, but the most, I've never seen anything where I just couldn't believe the unmitigated gall that they had to, after all of these months of telling people you can't do anything, to then turn around and say that it's okay to protest for Black Lives Matter. Like, no, this cause is even whatever it was, that letter that a bunch of epidemiologists signed onto. No, we think that this is so important that you can go do this. But to top that, then they turn around and still want to use it as a hammer for like a Trump rally. So, you're still going to go get people sick if you want to go see Donald Trump speak. But if you want to protest racism, then that's okay.
So I think the way to do it is bring a Black Lives Matter sign to the Trump protest, and you're protected against the virus.
This is what I told Mark Skousen. I was like, we could have gotten Freedom Fest going. We just have to, be protesting racism, and we would all be out in Vegas right now.
Exactly. Well, not to mention, okay, you can go out and protest on behalf of Black Lives Matter. However, if your mother dies, there can't be more than 10 people at her funeral. No exceptions. There can't be more than 10 people mourning your mother, but people can go protest for a political cause.
Who are you? I mean, to make these type of decisions for people. The fact that people for so long couldn't go to church. I mean, that's who is anyone to decide that that's just not that important? That's actually really, really important to, hundreds of millions of people, like really, really important. And, I I've heard tons of just like anecdotal stories of people. I mean, I heard this one guy, someone who follows me on Twitter told this story about how his wife was pregnant. And at one point she got very ill and they thought they were going to lose the baby, and they wouldn't let him he had to wait in the car in the parking lot. They wouldn't let him in to her OBGYN appointment with her. Now, everything was fine, thank God, with them, and it worked out. But so, like, how can someone else tell me that it's like, no, you can't take a risk so that you could be there to hold your wife's hand as she's possibly going to lose your baby? But it's okay. It's okay to protest systemic racism. Like, what? Who gets to make that decision for somebody? It's outrageous.
Yeah. But unfortunately, when you train people year after year in the ideological conformity factories of the public schools, they leave with this benign view of the state as just being innocent public servants who deserve the benefit of the doubt. And so I'm surprised we've gotten away this far with this much freedom, given that that's the point of view everybody has. Tell people very briefly about Part of the Problem, because it's really one of the only podcasts I listen to.
Oh, well, that means a lot to me. Yeah, it's Part of the Problem. That's my podcast. You can get it at gasdigitalnetwork.com. It's on YouTube, and it's everywhere that podcasts are available. And it's I just vent and let out all of my thoughts and opinions about all of the craziness of the world today from a ANCAP Rothbardian Woodsian point of view. So yeah, go check that out.
All right, so that's Part of the Problem. We'll link to Dave's podcast, tomwoods.com/1690, 1690. Of course, should we say something about Gas Digital Network? Because I want to get people right over there.
Oh, yeah, gasdigitalnetwork.com. It's a podcast network that Louis J. Gomez and Ralph Sutton run. There's a bunch of really great comedy shows on the podcast, a bunch of different shows on there. Go check it out. Really great people who run the network. It's and a bunch of really great shows. So I recommend all of them. And it's always great to be on your show, Tom.
Thanks, Dave. So you can find Part of the Problem on the Gas Digital Network. So go check that out. You should get Dave's comedy special, because we probably have to wait a little while for his next one because the world has ended. But if we get a second,
as soon as possible, I will get the next hour out to you, good people.
All right, I'll link to that also in the show notes page. But assuming we get a second chance at the world, that'll be one of the things I look forward to. Thanks a lot, Dave.
All right, thank you, Tom.
All right, everybody. It looks like they want to keep us locked up forever in this COVID-19 thing because of surges and whatever else. This was not what they said at the beginning, but now they just can't stop themselves. So you still do need the old man's ebook. Your Facebook friends are wrong about the lockdown. Go get that at wrongaboutlockdown.com. In the U.S., you can also get it by texting the word lockdown to the number 33444. See you tomorrow.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit tomwoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.